Something historic just happened. Following coordinated strikes by Israel and the United States on Iran's nuclear facilities, the exiled Crown Prince of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, stepped into the spotlight on Monday the 23rd of June. In a rare and impassioned speech, he called for nothing less than the resignation of Iran's supreme leader and a peaceful transition to democracy. But is this just another flash in the pan of exile politics? Or is this truly the beginning of the end for one of the world's most entrenched authoritarian regimes? To answer that, we need to go back to 1979, back to the revolution that changed everything. This is Nexus-Feed Deep Dive Session. Grab a cup of something and sit tight. This one promises to be captivating. So, let's get started. Before the black turbans and anti-American slogans, there was the Peacock Throne. Under Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, Iran in the 20th century was a pro-Western monarchy with massive oil wealth, ambitious modernization plans, and tight political repression. The Shah's White Revolution sought to modernize Iran's economy and society, but at great cost. Land reforms failed to satisfy rural populations, while urban elites grew resentful of the regime's authoritarianism. Meanwhile, the CIA-backed 1953 coup against Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh had left a lasting scar. Mossadegh had nationalized Iran's oil industry, threatening British and American interests. When the Shah fled during the coup attempt, many Iranians saw it as a foreign-sponsored betrayal of Iranian democracy. The monarchy was later restored, but its legitimacy was permanently damaged. In this climate, a quiet cleric named Ruhollah Khomeini began preaching revolution. Exiled for years, he gained followers through cassette tapes smuggled into the country, preaching an Islamic form of governance that rejected Western domination and the Shah's secularism. Khomeini combined populist rhetoric with deep religious authority, positioning himself as both the savior of the downtrodden and a staunch opponent of foreign influence. By 1979, the pressure boiled over. The Shah fled, Khomeini returned, and the Islamic Republic was born. What emerged was not a pluralistic democracy, but a theocratic autocracy. Khomeini fused religion with state power, establishing a unique system of rule known as Velayat-e-Faqih, or guardianship of the Islamic jurist. In this model, a senior Islamic scholar, not elected by the people, would serve as the supreme leader, with final say over everything from foreign policy to the military to the media. Soon came the purges. Former allies, liberal intellectuals, secular nationalists, Marxists, were rounded up and executed. Thousands were killed or exiled. The new Revolutionary Guard was formed as a parallel military force, loyal not to the people or the Constitution, but to the supreme leader himself. Then came war. In 1980, Iraq, under Saddam Hussein, invaded Iran. The regime used the conflict to consolidate power. The war lasted 8 brutal years, with more than 1 million dead. Children were sent into minefields, cities were flattened, and yet the Islamic Republic endured. When Khomeini died in 1989, many expected change. What came instead was continuity. His successor, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, lacked Khomeini's charisma or religious standing, but over 3 decades, he mastered the art of power. With help from the IRGC and the conservative clerical establishment, Khamenei purged rivals and built a vast surveillance and patronage network. Today, Iran's supreme leader presides over a parallel state within the state, with economic holdings in construction, telecoms, oil, and more. Through the 1990s and 2000s, Iran became a paradox. Elections continued, but only for candidates vetted by clerical bodies. Reformist presidents like Mohammad Khatami won landslides but were ultimately powerless. Hardliners controlled the judiciary, security forces, and most importantly, the Supreme Leader's office. By the early 2000s, Iran was both politically brittle and socially dynamic. Over 60% of the population was under 30. Young Iranians studied science, used VPNs, learned English, watched banned Western movies, and listened to underground rock music. They wanted jobs, rights, dignity. But the regime's promise of a just Islamic society had long curdled into repression and cronyism. Then, in 2009, came the explosion. The Green Movement was not just about a stolen election. It was a demand to be heard. Millions poured into the streets chanting, "Where is my vote?" The regime responded with bullets and batons. Neda Aga Soltan, a young woman, was shot dead in broad daylight. Her death, caught on camera, became a symbol of the regime's brutality. Yet, even that uprising failed to dislodge the clerical elite. In 2015, a window opened. The nuclear deal, signed under Rouhani and the Obama administration, offered sanctions relief in exchange for Iran halting its uranium enrichment. For a brief moment, hope returned. European companies lined up to invest. Iranian airlines began ordering new planes. There was talk of change. But then came Trump. In 2018, the United States unilaterally withdrew from the deal and reimposed sanctions. Iran's economy crumbled again. Inflation soared. Its currency, the rial, collapsed. Protests resumed, this time angrier, more widespread, and more radical. Then came 2022. Mahsa Amini, a 22-year-old Kurdish woman, was arrested by the so-called morality police for improper hijab. She died in custody. The spark ignited a fire. Women took to the streets, ripping off headscarves, chanting "Woman, life, freedom." Men joined them, students, oil workers, teachers. The protests swept across more than 100 cities. This time, the demands were existential, not reform, revolution. The regime responded with typical ruthlessness: mass arrests, torture, executions. Yet something had shifted. Iran's fear barrier, the psychological wall that kept people silent, was breaking down. And then, in 2025, the tension snapped. Israel and the United States launched coordinated strikes on Iran's nuclear infrastructure. Natanz, Fordow, and parts of Isfahan's missile infrastructure were hit. Iran's air defenses failed to repel the full assault. Satellite images show cratered rooftops, scorched centrifuge halls. Western intelligence estimates suggest Iran's uranium enrichment has been set back by 2 to 3 years. Inside Iran, the mood turned volatile. The government claims victory. It accuses Zionist and imperialist forces of sabotage. But on the streets, ordinary Iranians are asking deeper questions. Why was the regime unable to protect us? Why is our economy in ruins? Why are our sons and daughters being dragged into a war they never chose? In this atmosphere of fear and uncertainty, Reza Pahlavi made his move. From exile, the Crown Prince delivered a direct challenge to the supreme leader. He called for a peaceful, democratic transition, invoking Iran's long history, its ancient civilization, and its right to be free. He didn't call for the return of monarchy, but instead offered himself as a transitional figure, someone who could unite the fractured opposition and facilitate a post-theocratic system. What was remarkable wasn't just the speech, it was the reaction. Inside Iran, his name trended on encrypted social media platforms. Iranian diaspora media ran wall-to-wall coverage. Exiled activists, many of whom had been critical of the monarchy, cautiously welcomed the statement. This wasn't nostalgia for the Shah, it was desperation for anything different. Iran today is teetering. The supreme leader is elderly and reportedly unwell. His son, Mojtaba, is widely seen as illegitimate. Even among hardliners, there are quiet doubts. The Revolutionary Guard is split. Some commanders are true believers. Others are pragmatic businessmen who fear economic collapse more than regime change. In recent months, signs of instability have multiplied. Desertions from the police, unexplained fires at military depots, encrypted videos from inside IRGC barracks showing soldiers refusing orders. It's not yet a revolution, but it's not far off either. Internationally, the stakes are enormous. A post-theocratic Iran could shift the entire balance of power in the Middle East. It could realign energy markets, challenge Saudi dominance, and restore ties with the West. But a chaotic collapse could also trigger a refugee crisis, civil war, or a scramble for the country's vast natural resources. The regime knows this. That's why it's responding the only way it knows how, with fear. But fear, once broken, is hard to rebuild. And so, the regime is doing what it has always done, tightening its grip. Arrests have surged. Journalists, students, former officials, and even family members of protesters are being rounded up in sweeping raids. Some disappear without a trace. Others are paraded on television in forced confessions. The goal is clear: silence dissent before it becomes uncontrollable. But Iran's young people are no longer afraid. This is a generation born under sanctions, raised on VPNs, educated in a nation that censors their books but not their thoughts. They've seen how the regime lives, how the children of elites study abroad while the rest of the country struggles to afford bread. They know the hypocrisy. They've lived it. It's not just students in Tehran or women in Esfahan. It's truck drivers in Mashhad refusing to deliver fuel, oil workers in Khuzestan going on strike, teachers in Tabriz walking out of classrooms. What began as urban protest is spreading into rural discontent. All of this raises the question that has haunted Iran for decades. What comes after the regime? Some fear that the fall of the Islamic Republic would mean chaos, civil war, ethnic fragmentation, a vacuum that could be filled by something even worse. These fears aren't unfounded. Iran is home to a mix of ethnic groups, including Azeris, Kurds, Arabs, and Baluchis, many of whom have long been marginalized. But others argue that this is exactly why the Islamic Republic must go. Its centralization of power has stoked division, not healed it. A new system, one based on decentralization, civil liberties, and representative governance, could give Iran's diverse population a stake in the future. And that's where Reza Pahlavi's role becomes interesting. He has no army, no political party, no formal power, but he carries a symbolic weight. For older Iranians, he's the son of the last monarch. For younger ones, he's simply someone speaking out when too many remain silent. If not as a ruler, then as a transitional figure he may offer continuity amidst uncertainty. Still, he faces enormous challenges. Iran's opposition is fragmented. There are monarchists, Republicans, liberals, nationalists, Islamists in exile, even some leftist groups. Unifying them will be difficult. Then there's the diaspora, powerful, wealthy, and vocal, but often out of sync with realities on the ground. And finally, there's the IRGC. The Revolutionary Guard isn't just a military force, it's a business empire, a shadow state. It controls ports, telecoms, construction, oil. Many fear that even if the clerics fall, the IRGC might try to seize power directly, preserving the core of the system under a new nationalist guise. So, what's most likely to happen next? First, the regime will likely try to wait out the crisis. Like already started on the 23rd of June, it will launch a few more missiles against Israel and American interest in the region to save face. Khamenei may survive this storm, as he has so many before. But with every protest, every bombing, every speech from exile, his aura of invincibility weakens. Second, we're likely to see more cracks within the establishment. Reformists may re-emerge, not out of conviction, but out of survival instinct. Some within the IRGC may begin looking for an off-ramp, perhaps even seeking quiet back channels with Western governments. Third, if Khamenei dies or is incapacitated, Before the system stabilizes, we may see a full-scale power struggle. Mojtaba Khamenei will try to inherit the throne, but without broad clerical or public support, his position will be tenuous at best. In that window of uncertainty, figures like Reza Pahlavi or a civilian transitional council may have their best shot. But make no mistake, transitions in Iran are never clean. The regime is likely to double down on nationalist rhetoric. We may see continuation of retaliatory strikes against U.S. allies as already started against U.S. bases in Qatar and Iraq. The Persian Gulf could become a flashpoint. Oil prices could spike. The regime thrives in crisis, and it may create one deliberately to survive. Yet, there's something different this time. It's not just that the regime is weaker, it's that the people are stronger. They've tasted defiance. They've seen solidarity. They know the regime can be challenged, and perhaps even brought down. Iran has been here before, on the edge of change, in 1906, during the Constitutional Revolution, in 1951, with Mossadegh's national movement, in 1979, with Khomeini. Each time, the direction of change was shaped not only by popular will, but by the organization, unity, and leadership of the movement that followed. Today, a new chapter may be writing itself. Bombs may have shaken the foundations, but it's words, spoken bravely, in exile, and whispered defiantly on the streets of Tehran, that could bring the walls down. The regime is watching. The world is watching. And most importantly, the Iranian people are watching each other, waiting to see who will blink first. 45 years ago, Iran traded a monarchy for a theocracy. Today, it may be preparing to trade fear for freedom. Reza Pahlavi's speech was not just a plea. It was a provocation, a challenge, a signal that the regime's monopoly on legitimacy is cracking. What happens next won't be determined by Washington or Tel Aviv, nor even by those in exile. It will be decided in the alleyways of Shiraz, the classrooms of Qom, the oil fields of Avaz, and the living rooms of millions of Iranians who, for the first time in decades, are daring to hope. The road ahead is uncertain, but one thing is clear: Iran will not be the same after this. What began with bombs may end in ballots or blood. The choice lies ahead, and the world is watching. This has been a Nexus-Feed deep dive session. As a new channel, we need your support to reach a wider audience. So please subscribe to the channel, share the video, and leave us a comment to help boost our reach. Thank you for watching, and until our next one, stay curious, stay critical, and keep the good people of Iran in your thoughts.